Here's a quick look at the new P-51 Mustang Mk.II by Tower Hobbies. This is probably the only impulse buy RC airplane I've ever done, except for what I've seen at the swap meets. This just looked pretty cool when I got sent through on the email. So let's have a quick look at it. As you can see, this wasn't really packaged for retail sales. There's no markings on the box except for the end of it, just to let you know what's in there. Very little in way of specs listed on the box. But from the Tower website, it's 40-inch wingspan, it's all foam, and better in every way than the previous P-51, or so they say. This is what we get inside. Very nicely packaged. Lots of room between the kit parts and the end of the box. And this box that I got in the mail too was also double boxed, so very well protected from the shipping. Here's the wing. Looks like it's all ready to go. It's got flaps if you want to use the optional flaps. Ailerons are all set. Servos look like they are already installed, ready to go. Plenty of room to install the retracts. We'll get to that in a little bit. Here's a little bit better look at the wing outside of the bag. Foam looks real nice. Colors are good. One piece already glued together. 40-inch wingspan though, it'll fit real nice in any car, and probably most vehicles too if you just leave the wing on. Here are the pockets for the servos if you want to use the optional flaps. I'll probably end up doing that, although I don't have the servos for that right now. Looks like the servo orientation is in the same direction, so you won't need to use a second channel or a reversing Y harness. You can just use a regular Y harness, so that works out really well. Let's have a look at the fuselage here. There we are. I don't know too much about the Mk.I version of the P-51 from Tower, although from some pictures that I've seen it looked like it had some balsa or some plywood reinforcement on the inside of the fuselage, and I don't think that's the case with this one here. Hatch is held on with magnets. All foam on the inside. Servos are ready to go. I'll probably have a look at these screws here, the set screws, just to make sure they have some Loctite on them. Canopy's got a pilot, instrument panel, and it fits in beautifully. That should hold on real tight for any maneuvers that you might be doing with it. Kit recommends at least an 1800 3-cell pack. Looks like it won't be a problem fitting a 2100 pack in there. And that's all I have. Connector's ready to go. It looks like it's Dean's compatible, although I've never used one of these before, so I'll have to check that out. Got the rudder. Looks like this is where the tail wheel is going to go. Looks like a steerable tail wheel unit. Motor's up front. It's a 1000 kV motor. It's the same motor that they used in the GB. And there are screws holding the cowl on, so that takes a little bit of work if you want to take the cowl off. Okay, finishing off the airframe is the horizontal stabilizer and elevators. These are pre-hinged, one piece. I'll probably just work that loose a little bit so there's no binding between the two halves. Scale counterbalances look real nice. There we go. Looks like it just attaches to the fuselage with some bolts coming through. Here's the instruction manual. You got some decals. You can mark it up however you want. Alright, here's the box of accessories. That's everything. We got the spinner, propeller, fixed landing gear. These look like the items to put the tail on. some sort of Velcro strip, and a Y harness for the ailerons, as well as further hardware if you want to install the flaps. Pretty nice little complete kit. It only comes with one propeller. I think these smaller electric airplanes, it'd be really nice if they could include more than one propeller. These seem to break pretty easily if you do a belly landing, especially when it's cold out and the plastic gets a little bit more brittle. Okay, like I said earlier, this airplane is set up for retracts if you want to use retracts. They don't come with it, they're optional. But at least when I purchased the kit on Tower, I was able to get a combo pricing to include the retracts for a pretty good deal. So here they are, they're electric. Obviously they weigh more than the fixed landing gear. They come with a Y harness in the combo pack. It's not reversing, so you can use any Y harness if you already have one sitting around. They look pretty good, although to be honest, I mostly just fly off of grass. So most of the time when I'm flying this thing, it's going to be hand launched and belly landed. So I'm really not doing too much by adding retracts except making the airplane more expensive and heavier. But it's still fun to have them, and sometimes I do fly off of pavement, so it'll be nice to have the retracts for that. Should be a pretty nice kit. Looking forward to putting this thing together and getting some flying in with this backyard Warbird. Okay, the first step in the assembly process is to attach the horizontal stabilizer and elevators. To do that, all you have to do is slide the horizontal stabilizer into the slot. You can see these two alignment notches which help keep it perfectly aligned. Make sure they go all the way in. There are two alignment holes that you check on the bottom of the fuselage, and all you have to do to keep the horizontal stabilizer attached is just use these foam plugs. So make sure that you have the paint on the outside and the correct angle to match up with the fuselage. Just slide it all the way down. Same with the aft plug. And that's it. Next, all we have to do is pop the clevis on the push rod and attach it to the elevator. Since I have the airplane in the cradle, I figured it was a good time to install the tail wheel. The tail wheel already has a flat spot grinded onto it, so that works out great. The kit has you remove the set screw, add some Loctite. All you have to do is slide the tail wheel in and put the screw back in. Next step is to attach the wing to the fuselage, route the aileron servo wires into the fuselage, attach the receiver, and turn on the model. What we're doing here is just making sure all the servos are well centered, working in the proper direction. I've got the ailerons working, you can't really see from here. I noticed that all the servos were very well centered, however the rudder needs just a little bit of adjustment. So to do that, just undo the screw, adjust the push rod as necessary to center up the control surface, and then reattach the screw. However, even with all of the servos that are well centered, I'm going to pull the screw off, add Loctite, and put the screw back on. So right before I tighten the screw all the way down, I'll just make sure the rudder is nicely centered. Tighten down the screw, good to go. While testing the servos, I discovered that the included battery connector does work with the Deans. However, it was very difficult to pull the Deans off the connector, so I'm going to solder on a Deans male plug to the speed control. To do that, I had to pull off the cowl. So here's a look at how the speed control is mounted. It's mounted on and held in place with a zip tie there. So I'll just have to cut the zip tie and thread the speed control out, solder on the new connector. But while I'm at it, this is a good opportunity to remove all the motor screws and add thread locker to them. The motor box itself, it doesn't feel like it's wood. It feels like it's a hard plastic. So hopefully this will hold up a little bit better than the light plywood that I've seen in the GB motor box. Here's a look at the installation of the Retracts. I've already done one right here. You can see on the right side. This is the left gear. The manual has you take a string or a small rubber band, something like that, tie a weight to it. So I just used a little nut there. And use it to thread it through the hole where the servo wire goes through, which is right in there. And then it makes it easier to pull the servo wires through when you actually install your Retract. So before I do that, I'm going to remove the hatch for the fixed gear, and then we'll get to work installing the Retract. Okay, just install the other landing gear. We've got the radio on, power's on the aircraft, and I assign the gear channel, and gear's in the up position now. Let's see how quickly the landing gear moves with no servo slowing. That's not too bad. It's a little bit quick. I'll probably adjust that down a little bit. But that's landing gear in action. Here I am with the 18SZ radio. We're going to go to servo speed, channel 5 gear, and the speed slows from 0, which is 0 slowing, to 27, which is the slowest. Seems that not much happens until you get to about 20 or so. So let's try a speed of 20 and see how the gear looks. Not much. Let's try another 5. Okay, there's a slow speed of 25. Okay, looks like this landing gear doesn't respond proportionally to the radio. It looks like it can only go one speed. The delay that we saw there was just waiting for the gear to recognize that the switch went all the way over. Normally if it was proportional gear, they'd be moving with the command of the radio. So when I hit the switch, nothing's going to happen. While the radio is proportionally giving more and more towards the retract, eventually it'll get to the fully retracted, and then the gear says, okay, now we're going to retract. There it goes. Alright, here's a quick look at the final configuration of all the parts in the interior of the P-51. As you can see, I had to move the battery back a little ways to get the airplane to balance at the recommended point. I also had to move the receiver as far back as I could practically do so. That's about as far as you can get it and still have the ESC connector leads reach the receiver. Got the two antenna all set 90 degrees to each other in there. That should be plenty of reception pretty far back from the battery. So with this 2150 battery, you can get the airplane to balance. With a smaller 1800, you should have plenty of room to move it forward and get the airplane to balance at the 3-inch mark. Got the throws all set up on the 18SC. I've got low rates and high rates as recommended by Tower. On the low rates on the elevator, it's only 1/8 of an inch. It's not very much. That's it. On high rates, 1/4 inch is recommended. I use just a little bit more than a 1/4 inch. Here's a low rate for the rudder and high rate. So that's about as far as the servo will go. You can use a closer hole in on the control arm if you really want to get a little bit more rudder in, but we'll see how this goes. It should be enough rudder to fly the aircraft in a sport manner. For the ailerons, use a little bit more. This is low rate here and high rate, and all my rates are using about somewhere between 15 and 25% expo. That should soften things up a little bit. The kit came with 4 sets of decals. I used the Old Crow. There's also Glamorous Glenn, Little Joe, and Gentleman Jim available with their own individual registration markings. So this is how it looks. It's all ready to go. A little bit cold out today, so I won't be flying it. Put the canopy on, and we have a good looking Mustang ready to go.